Welcome everybody back to the workshop. This is episode 20 of What's on Your Workbench. Black screen, fade in. Chili, how are you doing? My name's Andrew with craftybeetroot.com. We have Chili from WOYWBE Solutions. I guess we might be able to go into a little bit of that later. But Chili, how are you been?
Well, I am feeling rested and enthused. How about you?
I'm never rested, but I am enthused. So
that's because I don't have 3 kids running around.
yeah, it gets a bit like that. I was on call on the previous weekend, so I was getting calls all through the night. So that's always fun. It's always like, I'm going to do this on the weekend. And then you're like, nope, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to answer calls. And yeah, but no, it's good. Always good. Lots of projects going on, which is always the goal. And it's funny because I noticed that when I'm in projects, I have like phases. And so I'll have like 2 or 3 projects kind of going at the same time, and then they'll kind of all finish up. And then I'll have like nothing. I'll be like, oh, I can do anything I want. And then I'll start ones, and I'm like, oh, now I'm locked into this project. It's like, oh, that's the one I was supposed to do 2 years ago. Then I actually start working on it. But how about yourself? You've been working on anything the last couple of weeks, or I know you've been busy with some other stuff.
Yeah, I took some time to one, run away to the mountains for a few days, which was glorious, and 2, get legal in the US for riding a motorcycle. I've done it for many years, known how to do it for many years, but I've never been legal. So now that I'm getting older and theoretically more mature, I decided it would probably be wise to be legal if I choose to ride a bike again.
Nice.
So yeah, just done a little bit of stuff with that and doing some planning and some kind of work on next steps for what's gonna be coming up for me and my business.
Well, very good. Well, we might get into that a bit later, but let's find out what's been on your workbench, or what's on your workbench, I guess.
Yes, well, much like you a few weeks ago had moved your base of operations from your workbench to the sewing table, I have moved my base of operations from the workbench to the garage as of late, because I am doing a fair amount of work on my car. I have a 1966 Chevrolet Chevelle that I have been so lucky to drive and enjoy for the past few years. And I've been putting some work into it because I may very well potentially be selling it in the near future to fund the new project, the new big project. So what I was doing most recently is it had some old rally wheels on it, which were they were originally cast wheels that are then machined to create a smooth surface kind of against the rougher cast surface. So it creates some depth and dimension to it. The previous owner had taken those and painted the cast parts to somewhat-ish match the body color.
Okay, yep.
Which is a really cool deep blue.
Yeah, it's a beautiful blue color.
Yeah, it was. It's Dodge Viper blue from like the early 2000s.
It'll be the picture of this picture of the podcast. I'll put your car picture up on there, since I haven't had your project as like nice. The title card for a while.
So it's the problem is they just used body paint on the wheels, which doesn't hold up very well. One, because these wheels are cast aluminum, so body paint is not made to work on aluminum very well. You need a different formulation for that. Two, wheels are subjected to different different degradations than a body is. You have brake dust, things like that, which just really are hard on wheels. So it was all faded and it didn't look that great. It was a good idea, but I didn't like it.
Yeah.
So I took all the wheels off, stripped them down and repainted them, and just did them in black. And not like super high gloss, but
Like a
kind of
satin.
between matte and gloss. Yeah, I mean, it's probably more than satin, but it's hard to do a real high gloss on those parts that are cast. It just doesn't look very good.
Yeah, it almost looks like a powder coat almost finish. Like, I guess that's more.
And I didn't really want to have a huge difference between the cast and milled surfaces, but I also didn't want to put the effort in that would be required to sand those cast surfaces to be close to the milled surface. There's a lot of contours, and it most certainly could be done, but I wasn't looking to invest that at this time. So yeah, just kind of got them stripped down, sanded down enough to be where they would take the paint, and sprayed them down, and it really made a huge difference.
Looks wicked now.
Yeah, thanks. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. It looks pretty good. It fits the car really well.
Yeah, it gives it a much better attitude and stance to it. Just it looks good.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. So I mean, it's not my normal craft that we necessarily talk about on here, but it is a craft that I've practiced in my life and I'm very passionate about. I love cars. I love old cars, and I love working on them. Both body work and mechanics, I think, are incredibly interesting. So it was a good excuse, if nothing else, to dust off some tools I haven't used in a while and brush up on some skills.
What kind of paint did you use? Was that like an engine paint, or is there special wheel paint?
Yeah, they make paint specifically for wheels. Because one of the other things that's really hard about it is not only do you have the normal wear and tear from the road, but also from changing tires. When you change a tire, you put it on a machine that runs around the bead, and if you don't use the right paint, it'll scrape it right off.
Yeah.
So there's very specific paint that's made for wheels. So that's what I used. And I mean, the process is really pretty simple. I unmounted my tires, get it down to the bare rim, and then sand. Well, first use a brake dust cleaner or a wheel cleaner that helps get all that brake dust off.
Yeah.
Of which there was plenty on these. They looked entirely different just after I did that. Yeah. And then you use just regular Dawn dish soap, or whatever brand, dish soap. That's a degreasing dish soap.
Yeah.
To get any grease residue off, including grease from your fingers.
Yep.
You can't see it, but the grease left behind, the oils from your fingers, will cause paint to not adhere properly. So you got to glove up, get that all washed down, then go through with a 240 grit or 220 grit sandpaper and knock down a lot of the roughness from, like, especially those cast pieces, but also some of the dings that the wheels had picked up, over time. And then rinse it down, and then go over it with 400 grit. And then again, wash it with the dish soap to get it all clean, prepped, ready to go. And then from there, it's time to hook up the spray gun and start laying down some some base coat primer, which there's a specific primer that you use on wheels as well.
Yep.
And for these ones being aluminum, that you have to take into account as well. And then after that primer, the wheel color, which I used a 2-stage paint. So auto paint used to be all single stage, which meant that over your primer you sprayed your color.
Yep.
And the color had, the hardener in it too. That's it. That has really gone out of popularity. Most stuff now is sprayed with 2-stage, which is your color and then a clear coat.
Yep.
And that clear coat is much more protective, over a longer period of time.
Yep.
So that's what I did on these. And yeah, I'm really happy with how they turned out. I mean, I didn't go, like I said, I didn't go bananas on them, trying to make this, a showpiece or anything. Because one, I don't believe in trailer queens, which is a car that, you put on a trailer, drive it to a show, take it off. Never was really driven. I hate that. It drives me nuts. Cars were originally built to be used.
Yeah.
And I feel like we need to keep using them. So the Chevelle is not a trailer queen. She's a driver. I drive the wheels off her and have a blast doing it.
Yep. Yep. No, I completely agree. I feel like cars get sad when they're not used for the purpose. I mean, it's the same with, like, in my world, kind of guns and things like that, where people have these beautiful guns and they haven't shot them for 30 years. And it's like, I mean, I can understand if it's a 200-year-old gun where if you shoot it, it's going to explode in your face. But, it's like, and the more you use it, the more you look after it. If you don't, you know what I mean? It's like those old houses that nobody lives in because nobody's allowed to pull them down because they're heritage listed, or that's what they call it here in Australia. But it's like, if you let people live in it, people will look after it. And if they look after it, it'll last 5 times as long. But
yeah, the worst thing you can do for a car is to let it sit.
Yeah.
More damage will happen in letting a car just sit than it will actually driving it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not the only school of thought. There are people who really think that some things just need to be preserved. But I really appreciate, like in the States, one of our people who is most noted, amongst car collectors and in car culture would be Jay Leno, who used to host The Tonight Show.
Yep.
And he is the first person to admit that he is the president of the More Money Than Sense Club.
Yep.
Meaning he spends way more money on cars than makes, sense.
Yeah.
But what I love about him is he drives them all.
Yeah.
And I mean, he has like hundreds.
Yeah. And
everything from, a brand new, Hellcat Challenger.
Yeah.
Back to steam powered cars.
Yeah. And he's got an electric, kind of old 1900 electric car as well, I think, that he's doing up. And
And
McLaren F1. Yeah.
He drives them all. He takes out the steamers.
Yeah.
And he has a fleet of mechanics that know these old cars and knows how they work. And they keep them not just show worthy, but road worthy, which is amazing.
Well, and what's amazing is that he'll go and buy this old junk piece of car and do it up when he could have gone and bought, 3 or 4 Porsches or whatever. And he's like, no, I want that car because, that's a piece of history and I want to get it running.
Have you ever watched any of his episodes of Jay Leno's Garage?
Yeah. It's
my favorite one is he has a quasi Rolls Royce.
Okay.
Because it is a Rolls Royce chassis. And he got it from a guy who had the chassis and the engine. But the engine is a Merlin aircraft engine.
Yep.
And there was no body. He had people build a body for it that sticks to the period. And I mean, if you saw this thing, you would think it was built in the 30s. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And he takes it out. I mean, it's $1 million+ car all day long. And he takes it out, just drives the daylights out of it. He paid people to engineer solutions that nobody had thought of for these vehicles.
Yeah.
Because there was a time when, like post World War II, there were a lot of people buying up these Merlin engines. Merlin is the US name for them.
It's the Mustang.
Rolls-Royce made them.
Yeah, it's the Mustang engine that was used in the P-51 Mustang and the Spitfire.
Yeah,
as well as I think the
exactly.
Hurricane.
The was in the Mustang. Yeah, in the UK it was in the Spitfire.
Yeah.
But they
still the best sounding engine ever made.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal work of art. I mean, the engine itself is amazing. But the problem with them is they're designed to run at a constant 6,000 RPM.
Yep.
As a plane is flying. They're not built to run at low RPM like they need to in a car.
Yeah.
So he had somebody design and install an electric water pump system, and ditch the mechanical water pump, so it's constantly forcing coolant through it, which is just amazing. And he can take it out and drive it all day without an issue. He had to put a newer. They used to put Jaguar transmissions behind them because they fit, but they can't hold up to the abuse and the torque levels of these engines. But now there are some transmissions that can from heavy trucks.
Yep.
So he put an Allison truck transmission behind it, and he takes it out on the highway, like on the freeway in California, cruising at 80 miles an hour at about 1,500 RPM.
Yeah, it's just, if you want to talk about dream jobs, those mechanics, man, they're like, there was one when they were working on that steam car and they had to basically remachine all of the piping, and they were doing it all like by hand, and absolutely unreal. Talk about dream jobs. Really cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So that's what I've been working on. I'm going to be working on some interior and fuel system stuff. Those parts should be here tomorrow, actually.
Oh, nice.
I can start working on that, and the hope is to to send her off to a new home, and then use those funds to work on the Holy Grail project.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's exciting stuff.
Yeah, which there's other stuff that I've been doing on the side for that. Like my wife and I just recently had our 12th anniversary. That's why we went off to the mountains for a bit. But for our anniversary, she got me this book that teaches you how to draw cars, because I am artistically inept. Like, I struggle with stick figures.
I don't know. Those pictures you were drawing were pretty good from that book.
Well, it's getting there. It is getting there. I drew a Scout first because it's essentially two boxes stacked on each other. It went real easy. But I have started sketching some just profile views first of what I'm thinking about building. For those who didn't catch on to this in previous episodes, the Holy Grail
Go back and watch it.
Yeah, the Holy Grail project is a wood-bodied car. And it's going to be similar to the style of a boat tail speedster. So it'll be open, no top, like a roadster. And the back end of it will taper to a point, like an old wood boat. Hence the term boat tail speedster. But the whole exterior body of it will be wood construction. And the vast majority of the frame of it, frame meaning the bones of the body, not the chassis frame, that will be metal. I'm not that adventurous yet to build a frame.
Yeah, that might have a bit too much flex in it if the chassis.
Well, actually, up until I think it was early 2000s, the Morgan company in the UK built wood frame cars. And they still to this day build some of their models with metal over wood construction for the body.
Yep. Yeah, no, I've seen a couple of those Morgans on Top Gear, old Top Gear. They used to have them. They look pretty nice.
Yeah. They're gorgeous, gorgeous vehicles. And even with their more modern cars, and their cars that are, metal over wood frame, they are all handcrafted. Morgan does not have an assembly line. They have a team of 2 technicians that are assigned to each vehicle, and they are responsible for handcrafting that vehicle, which is just phenomenal.
Sounds very inefficient and expensive.
It is. It really is. But the results, I think, speak for themselves. It's a remnant of a bygone era. That's for sure.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know what a Morgan looks like, if you've ever seen the original 101 Dalmatians, Cruella de Vil's car, that's what a Morgan looks like.
Kind of. Corella's car was actually based off of a Duesenberg, is what they based the design of Corella's car off of.
It's got the same curves. It always reminded me of the Morgan. Well, Morgan always reminded me of that. It's an old style, a very old style.
Yeah,
very short
long,
cab,
straight hood, short cab, short tail. Yeah, but they're gorgeous. I mean, you can't look at one and not admire it. It's just yeah. So that's what I've been up to. How about you, Andrew? What's been on your workbench?
A variety of projects. I've got my wife's birthday coming up, so I think next week I might be talking about cake decorating, because I can't really talk about it right now because it's only half done, but we change things up. But yeah, so today is in Australia a fairly big day for, well, I guess it's hard to say because it does change around with COVID, but every year, once a year in Australia, we have what we call Book Week. And this is, for lack of a better term, is Australian Halloween. So this is the week that kids can dress up in costumes. This is the week that they can, they don't have, like today, my children are at school all day, but I don't think they're doing any work. There's a parade. And so me being me, well, my children have to be up to par with their costumes. So I'm actually reusing one that I made 3-4 months ago. We had to dress up, and at that point I kind of already had in mind, okay, if I put some effort in now, that'll save me effort down the line. And one of the costumes that my daughter and son are going as Pokemon fans, so Misty and Ash from Pokemon, the 2 main characters. And Misty has a Pokemon called a Togepi, for those of you that desperately needed to know the names of the Pokemon. And she really wanted this Pokemon. And I was like, oh man, there's like 2 days to go. Like maybe there's one at the store, but apparently it's not as popular as it was years ago. And if I had a week or 2, I could get a plush and, everything would be good. But I couldn't do that. So I was like, what am I going to do? I have to try and make this thing. And then I was like, I wonder if I can go back to one of my original techniques that I kind of got into making props with. It's a technique called Pepakura. Have you ever heard of it?
No, that's new to me.
All right. So I believe the original background is it's a Japanese word or something, but basically it's papercraft. And what it is it's a program somebody made where you can take any 3-dimensional object that you've designed in like 3D Fusion or whatever 3D program you use. You can put it into this program and it'll basically unwrap it. And you can tell it that I want 1,500 vertices, or I want 100 vertices. And it'll basically go, so if you had a skull, if you want, I want 15,000 vertices, right? It'll look almost like a perfect skull. If you go, I want 4 vertices, it'll make it a cube. And then what it does is it puts it into like a printout, so you can literally print it out. So this is what I've been working on, which is a Togepi made out of about 6 pieces of cardboard.
No way.
So for those of you,
crazy cool.
So for those of you that can't see, either go check out the YouTube video or just Google Pepakura something and it'll come up. And it's a free software. And if you type in anything, you'll pretty well come up with a design. So if you say Pepakura robot or whatever, there'll be one out there. And there's actually a website where the guy's gone through, or the girl, I'm not sure, whatever, but they're working on all the Pokemon. So you literally, any Pokemon you want, you can print it off. And this one, I printed it off on cardstock, and it came with all the colors and stuff on it. Now, the interesting thing about we're just beginning, Chili.
This is insane.
And it's great, right? So I mean, I kind of see it as the gateway 3D printing. So you can't afford a 3D printer, but you can 3D model. You can put that 3D model into this program, spit it out, and then you can make it. And like I said, you can simplify it, you can complicate it. Like this one is a fairly high detail model. But what you can else do with it, and this is, I'll jump to some previous projects, is you don't have to use paper. So you can use foam. And what you can do on the programming is you can adjust the thickness. Now, one of the first things I ever made when I was getting into prop making was this bad mama jamma. And so this is the same technique, Pepakura, except with foam. And so with foam, you don't have to fold it. Obviously, you can get those compound curves without having to fold it. So this is for those of you who can't see, sorry again, I did this has got to be 6-7 years ago. I did a Pepakura of C3PO's head using foam. But yeah, and you can see you get this, you get the shape. Now, if you want to take it to the next level, what you do, and so if you want to see how people, cosplayers that do like the Iron Man cosplays, this is like 101 how to do an Iron Play cosplay in a weekend. Is you get the foam pattern off Pepakura, you print it out, you trace it onto foam, you glue it on foam, and you're done. If you want to step it up, and this is where it first started, so it really, well, this is my understanding of where it first started, is when people were trying to make like stormtrooper costumes, they were originally made by vacuum forming over a buck with a thin plastic, ABS plastic or PVC plastic. But you need a lot of setup, you need the mold, you need to make the bark, like it's a lot of work. And so what people started doing is they went, I wonder if I can do it another way. So they would take the Pepakura and they would do it out of paper. So you do it something like this. Then what you would do is you would put fiberglass resin all over it, and then you'd make it basically hard. Then what you would do is you'd go put filler on it, and then you would basically sand it, add filler, sand it, add filler, until you got rid of all of those vertices. Now, if you do that, you end up with something like this.
What?
So this is the same technique. So this is what it looked like when I first did it. Imagine something like that. And just through adding fiberglass, and then adding filler, and then, a lot of Bondo, for those of you in the US, which, get this, in Australia, we call it bog, because who knows what we are. Pretty well same product, but yeah. So if you hear an Australian say they're going to bog it, they're saying they're going to Bondo. But anyway, but yeah, and so you basically, and you can kind of see inside how it's got all fiberglass in there, reinforcement. So inside I put fiberglass actual sheeting, and then I fiberglass resined over it to give it strength. But you can see how And without doubt, if you the most coolest looking part of a project, or the best work in progress picture you can ever see, is one of these when they're halfway through. So I guess I should say, for those of you that are listening, I'm holding up a Scout Trooper helmet that I made with it was actually manila folders, not vanilla folders. Yeah, so this is manila folders printed out. I folded it, glued it. There's actually a video on my YouTube channel of me making it, both the Pepakura and then the actual resin and stuff. But like I was saying, the coolest look you'll ever see is when these are being sanded, especially because you'll do like a primer paint to see like kind of where the high spot flows are, and then you'll hit it with sandpaper, and then you'll start, and I kind of did it on purpose, but a lot of people just use whatever cheap prime paint they've got lying around and slowly build up the layers. And so you see this like topographical map of like, and you can see through to like the base manila folder through like all the different layers. Oh, it's actually my profile picture on my Facebook page.
That blows my mind. Like, I have so many questions. Like,
so this helmet that I'm holding up is probably, $30, $40 in Bondo sandpaper and fiberglass. Like, I'm not going to say
how many hours.
Oh, we don't want to talk about that.
Oh, I do. How many hours go into something like that?
And so obviously with that one, I made it weathered, right? Because I know that I'm not going to be able to get it perfect. Guys get this, or people get this looking mirror finish. Like, people do this to make, it's not as common now, because those people that kind of have that time and money will go and get a 3D printer. But you go back, probably 5-10 years ago, it was before 3D printers really got their biting, and this is what people were doing to get into the game. And it's the number one way, and it's when my kids get a bit older and they want to get into making things, it's going to be like, start here, because it's all it is time, right? A lot of time. You don't need much resources. But yeah, so I don't even know how long, because I think I was working on that helmet for about 2 years or something. Like, I just would kind of work on it for a little bit, put it away, get it out, work on it for a little bit, put it away. Because as soon as you think you're getting close, then you'll have a look and you'll be like, oh no, that's terrible. And you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with it, put it away. And you get it out, and then you're like, all right, I'll put some more Bondo on it. But I mean, obviously the more you do it, the quicker you would get at it. But yeah, and it's super fun. Like, the first time I did it, I just did it with paper and an Iron Man helmet. And it took me like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 hours, just kind of a bit of glue stick. And it's just, and you get this like super cool readable product of what it is. Like, you can clearly tell what it is, and you can see that it's a bit janky, but yeah, it's to get a shape that looks as accurate as you want quickly and cheaply. It's a great technique.
All right, so I want to start. I want to start from the inside and work our way out.
Okay.
So, with the either paper or foam that you're using as your primary substrate, when you do this, Pepakura and print it out on that, what is that process to get the shape? Is there cutting involved, or just folding?
Yes.
Or
yes, so it's all like, how you make it. If I told you to make a cube, you would do the classic cross with the tabs, right? And then so it does that. So this one here has tabs all around it, and it'll actually have like compound curves. So I printed it out without any of the extra lines, but what it'll tell you to do is along here there'll be a bunch of like, fold it this way, fold it that way, fold it this way, fold it that way, all the way along that flat side to get all those compound curves. And it automatically breaks it up into pieces. So it doesn't just try and do it as like one big piece. It has some programming in there. So it'll know kind of what is the most it can do with one piece of section, and then it will cut it, and then you'll have another section. So I think this piece here, it probably had, so like these feet at the bottom, that was one piece. This hand was one piece. This shell section was probably 12 or so pieces. And again, you can control that. You can say, I want more detail, so I want more pieces. But there's a bit of logic. It's kind of like a slicer program for a 3D printer or a laser or whatever, or CNC.
Yeah.
Where it's gonna try and figure out the best way to do it.
This is really, I would say, the most basic version of this is obviously origami, which is just folding.
Yeah.
And then from there you go to kirigami, which does involve cutting pieces of paper as well as folding. And then you get into this.
See, I don't know. See, I think this is almost easier than origami, because origami, you're limited. And because of that limitation, it almost makes it harder. This one, you go, well, I don't need that piece of corner. Now I have to fold it out of existence. With this, you just go, I'll cut it out. And then with the Pepakura software, you can actually say how thick your material is. And so the thicker it is, obviously, the more curves, you can't come back in on a compound curve. And that's the main difference between doing it in foam and doing it in paper, is that paper, you'll have the tabs. With foam, you'll get rid of the tabs and you'll just do butt joints all the way around.
And what do you use as an adhesive when you're doing the foam?
So the foam, I would use barge cement or some kind of cement. Like typically in the foam world, they'll use a leather cement, leather barge. A contact cement is the most common. You can use super glue. I can't remember if that one I used super glue or not. Super glue works pretty good as well on foam. This one here, obviously, I just used some paper glue, and that worked. And I actually filled this one with stuffing just to kind of, if you give it a little bit of a squeeze, it's not going to completely collapse. But
so moving out from that base substrate, then you cover in fiberglass.
Yeah, so you typically just do you just do some kind of resin. I use fiberglass resin because that's what I had, and to me it made the most sense to use that. And then on the inside, you'll do like the glass with the actual fiberglass matting and the resin to give it that strength.
Yeah, and I'm assuming with the complexity of those curves, you're just using fiberglass mat as opposed to fiberglass cloth.
I kind of did a bit of both. For the inside of the helmet, I could use a bit of mat, and then or the fabric or the cloth or whatever. But then in some areas, I just kind of pulled it apart and stuffed it in, and didn't do a very good job. But it's on the inside, so it doesn't matter. Only scratches up my face.
For those who don't know the difference, fiberglass mat, it does look like a cloth, but it's shorter strands of glass that are almost like particle board, like they're in random orientations. And,
that's what I used.
Yeah. Whereas fiberglass cloth is woven. It's a tightly woven structure, which is really good for some things. Like that's what I used on the paddle boards. And you can get them in different weights. But they don't do complex curves very well. It's really hard to use fiberglass cloth on something that has a lot of complexity to the shape.
Yeah, and I just picked up, I think, one of those starter kits or fix kits, patch kits from the local hardware store, so I wasn't getting too exotic.
So then we've got it resin and glassed, so our structure's hard, and then from there you go in with filler and start to work on smoothing things out, smoothing transitions you want, crisping up lines you want to be a little more crisp, and then, like you said, using that primer, which in the auto world we call that a guide coat, which is, there are very specific like guide coats that you can lay down,
Yeah. And
vast majority of people just use a primer because it's the same friggin' thing.
yeah, and pretty well a lot of this process is guided by fixing a car. You know, everybody recommends using the automotive primers, the filler primers, and things like that.
Yeah, wow. I will never complain about a body panel again.
Yeah, and then the last thing, and then kind of following on with that. So what I did with this is I ended up painting it white. Well, actually, I did a silver coat, and you can see it's pretty well dinged up because I basically went to town with scratching the junk out of the angle grinders, everything, because I wanted to. My eventual goal is to have this costume or cosplay be as if, you know, you're basically fighting the Ewoks on Endor and you're like the lone survivor that's been living off the land for 3 months as you're hobbling around, and basically it's how did you even survive. And then so I did like a silver coat, and then I did a white coat over the top, and then I basically chipped off and I burnt off a lot of that white coat. But then what I did is I actually did I'm sure you're aware of it, but you can buy catalyzing spray paints where it's basically got a thing at the bottom where you basically click it and it's basically a 2-part paint. So you get the benefits of, you know, the proper paints, but you get it in the spray can, so you don't have to have all the fancy equipment. And that's what I actually did, a clear coat over the top of this on before I did my final weathering with like brown paints and stuff. And so that hopefully gives me a very nice solid coating to protect this. Yeah, but yeah, so yeah, from this.
So what I'm hearing with this cosplay dream is that next we need to turn your motorcycle into a speeder bike, right?
The dream. I have seen plans for full-size speeder bikes. When my kids were young, that was always the joke, is that I'd be making ton rocking horse or a speeder bike rocking horse for the kids, but that one might be waiting for the for the grandkids, hopefully one day, maybe, or nieces and nephews, we'll see. But yeah, it's
yeah, that's amazing.
If anybody's got more time than sense, Pepakura is your friend. And for kids, it's like all you need is a printer, and you print it out, and you could give them a ream of paper. Here, actually, I do have a printer here. Because originally I was hoping to do this all on foam, but I just ran out of time, but that's what it looks like.
Okay.
So you print that out. I'll see if I can find a foot, because that'll give you. Yeah, you said it with sheet of paper. This is actually printed out at twice the size, so it's a little bit different, but that's the foot. So each of these dotted lines is a fold that you're supposed to do. I was a little bit.
That's printed out at twice the size?
Yep. So
you'd actually be doing something half that size.
Yeah. Actually, no, I think this is 135%. Because I don't know if you know, but on like PDF print, you can do a poster print and you can double it up in size, but then it'll split it over multiple sheets of paper. So I wanted it on 2 sheets of paper, not 4 sheets of paper. So I just did it like, I think the max I could do was like 135%. So yeah, it's about a 35% reduction.
Jeez. That's nuts.
It's all good. So yeah, you get like, and some of the bits can get a bit like, this is the hand.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but still, that, I mean, this here took me 3 nights. I think I started Tuesday night and finished it off last night. So you can get through it pretty good. But
I think I found a new craft for the next time my niece and nephew are over. We might have to try this out.
Yeah. Just go, hey, what do you want to make? Oh, I want to make a speeder bike. speeder bike, Pepakura. Oh, there's one. Like you can, X-Wings model, like, and then I mean, and that's just people generally. If you just Google it, people have it. But if you then want to do it yourself, all you need to do is find a 3D model from Thingiverse or something like that. Get the raw STL file, I think it is, and put it into download the free maker, and off you go. Super fun.
Wow.
Well, it's not fun. Great. I take that back. It's super effective.
I'm always excited to hear about and learn about a new craft, or new technique that I've never seen, and this certainly fits the bill. This is wow. This is just totally blown my mind.
Well, and what I'm showing you is amateur hour compared to what some of these guys do. Like and then what it does is it gives you a very fine appreciation of how to turn a flat surface into extremely complex shapes. And so you can apply that to fabric, you can apply that to wood, and like I'll see guys that they'll make armor for like clone troopers and stuff without the actual printing out. Like they'll just do it by eye, and they'll make up their own patterns and then fold it and then get the shape and stuff. So it's just
that's really awesome. I'm so glad that's what you chose to talk about today. That's so cool.
I'm so glad my daughter then pushed me to spend my last few nights when I should have been working on my wife's birthday present to make little Pokemon rather than things like that.
Oh, that's so much cooler than a plush version. Like so much cooler.
It's pretty rough. It looks good on the camera because it's not great. But if I had time, what I would have done is I would have kept the feet separate and the head separate from the shell, and I probably would have at least given it a coat of paint just to kind of tie it all together, and just kind of hide some of these lines a little bit. But the problem is once you do that, and you're like, oh, maybe I'll just give it a bit of a sand. And then you're like, well, now I'll just put a little bit of filler in there, and then it goes horribly wrong from there. Yeah. Anyway, so where can people find more of your work, Chili?
Well, probably the best places to find me are on social media, either Instagram or Facebook. You can search for Orwood Solutions and my stuff will pop up. It's a pretty unique name.
Yeah, and you can find more of me at craftybeetroot.com and my YouTube channel, Crafty Beetroot. You will find all my videos, and you will find some videos of me doing the Pepakura for that Scout Trooper helmet, and also me finishing it. So you can see the sanding process, and bringing it all the way from manila folders to a fairly good helmet that I'm pretty happy with. I've actually got all the parts to do the armor for that, and my goal was to have that for this Halloween. So we'll see how that goes. That is one of the higher priority projects this year, so maybe that will finally get finished. But and if you want to find more about the podcast, go ahead and go to whatsonyourworkbench.podbean.com, and you'll find more there. And we also have a YouTube channel for this podcast. If you haven't seen it, you should be able to find this podcast on any of the podcast listening devices, apps, things, Spotify, Apple, all of those ones. It's been a while. I'm out of practice.
And all those fancy whiz bangs that you young folks have.
Yeah. Yeah, the one that you only have one of that you've been using for the last 5 years because you don't ever change it if you're anything like me. So with that, we will find out next week what's on your workbench.